So hey guys. New series arrived and the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Elden Ring. So let's start the series. The thing that had once been a man was trying to eat Naruto's face. Its jaw, unhinged and dripping with a viscous, golden ichor, snapped shut inches from his nose. He slammed a palm into its sternum, the impact of his chakra-enhanced strength strong enough to shatter boulders, but the creature barely staggered. It just came at him again, its movements jerky and wrong, its eye sockets burning with twin points of sickly yellow light. Back off! Naruto roared, pivoting on his heel and driving a foot into its chest. This time, it flew back, crashing into a crumbling stone archway with a sickening crack. It didn't cry out. It just twitched, limbs akimbo, and began the slow, grinding process of trying to right itself. Naruto panted, the air tasting of ash and rust. 1 second ago, he'd been in the land of hot springs, chasing down a rogue chunin who'd stolen a sacred scroll. The next, a blinding flash of golden light had swallowed him whole, and he'd woken up here, wherever here was. He was on a cracked, windswept plain under a sky the color of a day-old bruise. A colossal, golden tree, so impossibly vast it seemed to hold up the heavens, dominated the horizon, its branches weeping amber light that did nothing to warm the chill in his bones. He was still wearing his orange and black tracksuit, the fabric now smeared with gray dust and the black, tar-like blood of the creature he'd just kicked. This wasn't a genjutsu. The pain in his knuckles was too real, the stench too potent. A wet, grinding noise. The creature was up again. What is your deal? Naruto yelled, frustration and fear bleeding into his voice. I don't know you! I don't have your stupid scroll! The creature's only answer was a gurgle. It shambled forward, dragging one useless leg. Naruto could see it more clearly now. It wore the tattered remnants of armor, fine once, now just rusted scraps. A sword, pitted and broken, was still clutched in its gauntlet fist. A soldier then? Or had been. This wasn't a fight. It was a mercy killing. Naruto's face, usually a mask of defiant cheer, settled into something grim. He formed a single-hand seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. He didn't need an army. Just one. The clone popped into existence beside him, nodded once, and they moved in tandem. While the real Naruto drew the creature's attention with a feint, the clone darted low, swept its legs, and as the abomination crashed to the ground, drove a Rasengan into its chest. There was no explosion of light, no dramatic flare. Just the sound of tearing, rotting flesh and the violent dispersal of the golden light within it. The creature shuddered, the points of light in its eyes winked out, and it lay still. Naruto stood over it, his hands on his knees, breathing heavily. The clone dispersed in a puff of smoke, sending its meager memories back to him. The thing hadn't felt pain. It hadn't felt anything. It was just empty. What is this place? He whispered to the uncaring sky. A twig snapped. Naruto spun around, a kunai already in his hand. A figure stood atop a nearby rise, silhouetted against the weeping golden tree. It was a woman, or at least, it had the shape of one. She was clad in tattered brown robes, a hood pulled low over her face. But where her left eye should have been, there was only a closed, sealed lid, tattooed with a curious, swirling mark. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The wind howled, carrying the distant, distorted cries of other things like the one he'd just put down. You are different, the woman said, her voice soft, yet it carried clearly to him. It was a voice that sounded like it belonged to a ghost. The light in you is not the gold of this land. It is a sun I have never seen. Who are you? Naruto demanded, not lowering his kunai. Where am I? My name is Melina, she said. And you, Outlander, are in the lands between. You stand at the foot of the storm hill, in the shadow of the Erd Tree. She gestured towards the impossible golden tree. You have just slain one of the soulless. The tarnished who have lost their grace. Naruto's mind reeled. Lands between? Erd Tree? Soulless? It was all gibberish. I need to get back home. I don't know how I got here, but I need to go back. Melina descended the rise, her movements fluid and silent. As she drew closer, he could see the pale, serious lines of her face. She looked young, but her one visible eye held an ancient weariness. The path you seek is not one I can show you, she said. But I can offer you another. One that may, in time, provide you with the strength to find your own way. She stopped a few feet from him, close enough that he could smell the faint scent of burnt leaves on her. I can turn the runes of this land into strength for you. I can be your maiden. In return. She hesitated, a flicker of something vulnerable crossing her features. You would take me with you. To the foot of the Erd Tree. To the Forge of the Giants. It is my purpose. Naruto stared at her. He was a stranger in a nightmare, and this woman was offering him a deal. His gut, the one that had kept him alive through 100 missions, was screaming at him. But another part of him, the part that had been lonely for so long before finding Irika, before finding Team 7, saw the same loneliness reflected in her solitary eye. "I don't even know you," he said, his voice softer. A faint, sad smile touched her lips. "No. You do not. But the tarnished of this land have forgotten how to trust. Perhaps that is why they are lost." She held out her hand. It was pale, slender, and utterly human. "What do you have to lose, Naruto Uzumaki?" His name on her lips sent a jolt through him. He hadn't told her his name. He should have run. He should have fought. But the wind was cold, the land was dead, and the thing he just killed had once been a man. He was utterly, completely alone. He looked at her offered hand, then at the colossal, weeping tree on the horizon. A journey. A purpose. It was better than standing still. He didn't take her hand. Not yet. Instead, he put his kunai away. "The Forge of the Giants, huh?" he said, forcing a spark of his old bravado into his voice. It sounded hollow, even to him. "Sounds like a long story. You got a place around here that serves ramen? I'm starving." Melina blinked, the non sequitur clearly surprising her. Then, for the first time, her expression softened into something that was almost a real smile. "No," she said simply. "But I know the way to a warm fire and a roof that does not leak. Follow me." She turned and began to walk, not waiting to see if he would follow. Naruto watched her go, a tiny, fragile figure against the backdrop of a dying world. He thought of the Hokage, of Sakura's smile, of Sasuke's brooding glare. Would he ever see them again? With a heavy sigh, he started walking after her. The golden light of the Erdtree cast his long, distorted shadow across the cracked ground, merging with the darkness. The warm fire turned out to be in the main hall of a massive, dilapidated castle overlooking a fog-shrouded lake. Melina called it Storm Vale. It was a graveyard of giants and ambition. Naruto followed her through a hidden side passage she knew, a treacherous path of crumbling ledges and howling wind that skirted the main gates. They moved in silence, the weight of the place pressing down on them. He saw more of the soulless here, shambling through courtyards or standing motionless at their posts. Some were little more than skeletons in armor. Others were bloated, corrupted things that oozed black bile. Melina led him past them all, her knowledge of the castle's forgotten ways absolute. She moved like a wraith, and Naruto, for all his ninja training, felt clumsy and loud in comparison. Finally, they reached a small, secluded room. It was a former guardroom, perhaps, with a cold hearth and a single, slit window that offered a view of the churning gray sky. A faint warmth emanated from a brazier in the corner, its coals glowing with a soft, amber light that was a far cry from the sickly gold outside. It was the first comforting thing Naruto had seen. He sank down onto a stone bench, the exhaustion of the day finally hitting him. Melina remained standing by the door, a silent sentinel. "This castle," Naruto said, staring into the brazier's glow. "It's like a giant dead animal. What happened here?" "The shattering," Melina said, the word heavy with grief. "The Elden Ring, the source of the Erdtree's power and the law of the world, was broken. In the chaos that followed, the demigods, children of Queen Marika, claimed the shards of the ring for themselves. They became corrupted by its power. Mad. They warred, and in their war, they broke the world." She looked at him. "General Radon, who now prowls the Wailing Dunes, locked the stars themselves in place. Male Nia, the Severed, unleashed a rot that devoured an entire continent. And Godric the Grafted, the lord of this very castle, cuts the limbs from warriors and sews them onto his own body to grow stronger." Naruto's stomach turned. He'd seen horror in his own world, the massacre of his clan, the atrocities of Orochimaru, but this was a different kind of horror. This was a world whose very rulers had become its disease. "That's insane." "It is," Melina agreed. "The tarnished, once the banished and the dead of this land, have been called back by a lost grace. They wander, seeking a shard of the Elden Ring. They seek to become Elden Lord, to mend the ring and usher in a new age. Most are consumed by the attempt." Naruto looked at his own hands. They were the hands of a ninja, trained to fight, to protect, to kill if he had to. But this wasn't a mission for his village. This was something else entirely. "And what do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice quiet. "Become one of these tarnished? Fight these demigods?" Melina finally moved from the door. She knelt before him, her single eye meeting his with an intensity that was almost frightening. "I want you to live," she said. "I see it in you, Naruto Uzumaki. A fire that the darkness of this land has not been able to touch. The tarnished here are driven by ambition, by revenge, by a desperate need to matter. They are hollow, even before they lose their grace. But you are full." She reached out and gently touched his chest, right over his heart. A warmth spread from her fingertips, not painful, but awakening. He felt a surge of something, a familiar energy, but different. Purer. "These are runes," she murmured, as a faint, shimmering dust seemed to coalesce in the air around him. The residue of life, of power. I can turn them into strength for you. So that when you face the horrors of this land, you will not break. Naruto felt it. The exhaustion in his limbs didn't vanish, but it felt manageable. He felt like he just had a good meal and a full night's sleep. He looked at Melina with newfound awe. You can do that? It is all I can do, she said, her voice tinged with a profound sadness. I am burnt and bodiless. A spirit. I cannot fight for you. I can only guide you, and offer you this. A spirit. He was traveling with a ghost. It should have terrified him. Instead, he just felt a pang of pity for her. To be so alone, so insubstantial in a world that was already fading. He stood up, his resolve hardening. He didn't understand this world, its rules, or its madness. But he understood one thing: he couldn't just sit here. He couldn't give up. Giving up meant becoming one of those shambling things outside, empty and lost. And he was Naruto Uzumaki. He didn't give up. Okay, Melina, he said, the name feeling more natural on his tongue now. The Erd Tree. The Forge of the Giants. That's the deal. But I'm not doing it to become some Elden Lord or fix your broken world. I'm doing it because it's the only way forward. And maybe, on the way, I'll find a way back home. Melina looked up at him, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something other than ancient weariness in her eye. It looked a lot like hope. That is enough, she said. For now, it is more than enough. As if on cue, a guttural roar echoed through the stone corridors of Stormvale. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated rage and power. It was nothing like the mindless groans of the soulless. This was a sound that shook dust from the ceiling and made the hairs on Naruto's arms stand on end. Godric, Melina whispered, rising to her feet. He knows something has entered his domain. Naruto's jaw tightened. He'd just gotten here. He hadn't even had a chance to process anything. But the world wasn't going to wait for him. It never did. He looked at the door, then back at Melina. The fear was there, a cold knot in his stomach. But so was the fire. The one she said the darkness couldn't touch. So, he said, cracking his knuckles and forcing a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. What's the plan, Ghost Girl? How do we get out of this castle without having to fight the crazy guy with too many arms? Melina's lips pressed into a thin line. We don't. He has guards at every exit. The only way forward is through the main courtyard. It is the quickest route to the gate leading to Liurnia. She paused, her gaze softening as she looked at him, this strange, bright boy in his garish orange clothes. And through him. He will not let us pass unchallenged. He is the Lord here. This is his domain. The roar came again, closer this time, followed by the clatter of armor and the guttural shouts of his insane, loyal soldiers. The hunt had begun. Naruto took a deep breath, the familiar calm of a fight settling over him. It was just another mission. A really, really messed up mission in a world that hated him. All right then, he said, his voice low and steady. Let's go meet the landlord. Chapter 2, The Grafted. The corridor outside the guardroom was a throat of stone and shadow, and it was beginning to choke on armed men. Or what passed for men in this place. They poured from side passages, their armor a mismatched collection of rusted plates and twisted leather, their faces pale and gaunt, eyes burning with that same sickly yellow light Naruto had seen in the shambling soldier on the plain. They weren't quite the mindless husks, but they weren't fully there, either. Zealots, perhaps. Slaves to Godric's will. Naruto didn't wait for them to close the distance. He shot forward, a blur of orange against the gray stone. His first target never even raised his spear. A palm strike to the chin sent him crashing into the wall, his golden light guttering out. Naruto flowed through them, his movements a stark contrast to their jerky, desperate swings. He was a shinobi, bred for close-quarters chaos. He ducked under a wild sword slash, pivoted, and drove his elbow into a soldier's kidney. As the man folded, Naruto used his back as a springboard, launching himself over a pair of spear-wielding guards and landing in their midst. Shadow Clone Jutsu! 3 clones popped into existence. The tiny corridor became a blender of orange and violence. While the real Naruto handled the spearman, a clone swept the legs from a swordsman, and another used a simple substitution jutsu, swapping with a loose stone to appear behind an archer trying to knock an arrow. It was brutal, efficient, and for Naruto, almost routine. The difference was the silence. They didn't scream in pain or shout battle cries. They just stopped, their golden light sputtering out like doused flames. Melina watched from the rear, her face impassive. She had seen death in many forms, but this was a new kind of violence. It was quick, precise, and came from a place of pure survival, not malice. Within a minute, it was over. The corridor was littered with still forms. Naruto stood in the center, breathing evenly, the last of his clones dispersing in a puff of smoke. He looked at the bodies, his expression troubled. They were people once, weren't they? Yes, Melina confirmed, stepping over a twisted arm. Tarnished, like yourself, who pledged themselves to Godric. He gives them a twisted form of grace, a purpose. In return, he takes everything else. Naruto shook his head, a wave of disgust washing over him. What a horrible place. They moved on, descending a spiraling staircase that opened into a vast, ruined hall. The ceiling was gone, open to the weeping sky. Dead leaves, golden and brittle, skittered across the flagstones. At the far end, a massive, barricaded gate stood as their goal. Between them and it, the courtyard was a killing ground. And standing in the center of it, as if waiting for them, was a monster. He was huge, easily twice the size of a normal man, clad in a mishmash of ornate armor plates that looked like they'd been torn from a dozen different suits. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part were the arms. Dozens of them. They sprouted from his back, his shoulders, even his sides. Some were gauntlet, some were bare and rotting, and all of them twitched and grasped at the air with a horrifying, independent life. One massive central arm, clearly his own, held a gigantic battle axe that was more of a slab of iron with an edge. His face, what little could be seen beneath a tarnished golden helm, was twisted into a rictus of arrogant fury. This was Godric the Grafted. Tarnished, emboldened by the flame of ambition. Godric's voice boomed, a grating, high-pitched sound that was utterly at odds with his size. He pointed a twitching, severed hand at Naruto. Hewn sticks of a single soul! You think to steal my throne? To claim my great rune? Naruto glanced back at Melina, who had melted into the shadows of the archway. She gave him a single, almost imperceptible nod. There was no avoiding this. I don't want your stupid throne, Naruto shouted back, his voice clear and defiant. I just want to get to the gate. So if you could just move your oversized collection of spare parts, we'll be on our way. Godric stared, as if the words didn't compute. Then a slow, ugly sneer spread across his face. Insolent wretch. The severed hands on his back clenched into fists. You will make a fine addition to my collection. I will graft your arms to my own. Your back. Your very spine. You will serve me, even in death. He charged. For such a massive, malformed creature, he was terrifyingly fast. The axe came down in a brutal overhead swing that Naruto only barely dodged, the wind from the blow whipping his hair. The stone where he'd been standing exploded into rubble. Naruto was on the offensive immediately, darting in close, inside the reach of the axe. He landed a solid kick to Godric's knee, but it was like kicking a tree trunk. The monster barely felt it. A severed hand, attached to his back, lashed out and swiped at Naruto's face. He jerked back, feeling the cold sting of rusted gauntlets rake across his cheek. Too slow! Godric bellowed, spinning the axe in a wide, horizontal arc. Naruto dropped to the ground, feeling the whoosh of air above him. He swept a leg, trying to trip him, but Godric's massive, tree-trunk legs were immovable. Naruto backflipped away, creating distance. Direct attacks weren't working. He needed something with more punch. He formed hand seals, a plan forming in his mind. Shadow Clone Jutsu! This time, he didn't hold back. A dozen clones exploded into existence, flooding the courtyard. They swarmed Godric, a tide of orange. The grafted lord roared in fury, swinging his axe and his grasping hands wildly. He crushed 3 clones instantly, but more took their place. They were a distraction. While Godric was occupied, the real Naruto was already moving, circling wide, gathering chakra in his palm. The familiar spiral of blue light, his signature technique, began to spin and grow. It wasn't just a Rasengan, it was a wind release, Rasen Shuriken. A shuriken of pure, cutting wind, crackling with destructive energy. It was his ultimate jutsu, and using it here, in this unfamiliar world, was a gamble. But he was out of options. Hey, ugly! A clone yelled, right in Godric's face. Over here! Godric swatted the clone away, but in that moment of distraction, he left his back exposed. Naruto leaped, the Rasen Shuriken held high. He brought it down, slamming it directly into the cluster of grafted arms sprouting from Godric's spine. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Rasen Shuriken didn't just impact, it expanded, a vortex of 1,000,000 microscopic blades tearing into the fused flesh and bone. Godric's roar of rage turned into a high-pitched, agonized scream. The grafted arms didn't just get cut, they were shredded, pulverized, ripped from their moorings in a spray of black, tar-like blood and rancid viscera. The massive, central arm holding the axe went limp, the weapon clattering to the ground. Godric stumbled forward, his grotesque network of stolen power destroyed. He was just a big man in a lot of armor now, bleeding from 100 wounds. He fell to his knees, breathing in ragged, wet gasps. Naruto landed lightly, his own breath coming in heaves. The technique had taken a lot out of him. He watched as the golden light in Godric's eyes began to gutter and fade. The demigod looked up at him, not with rage now, but with a pathetic, childlike confusion. "And mother," he whimpered, the word a pitiful gurgle. Why would you let a baseborn runt steal my power?" Then the light died, and Godric the Grafted crashed face first into the stone, dead. The courtyard was silent save for the wind. Naruto stared at the body, his chest heaving. He'd killed a lot of enemies in his life, but this felt different. This wasn't a rogue ninja or a criminal. This was a broken, pathetic thing that had been twisted by power into a monster. Melina emerged from the shadows, her face pale. She walked past Naruto and knelt by Godric's body. From the corpse, a faint, golden sigil began to rise, a complex, interlocking pattern of light. It drifted towards her, and she gently touched it. The sigil seemed to flow into her, and then, with a gesture, she transferred it to Naruto. A wave of power, raw and untamed, flooded through him. It was the power of a great rune, a fragment of a god. It was overwhelming, intoxicating, and terrifying all at once. He gasped, nearly buckling under the weight of it. "It is his great rune," Melina said softly, her voice strained from the effort of channeling it. "A piece of the Elden ring. Its power is yours now, though it is malformed. Like him, it will need to be restored at a divine tower before its true strength can be wielded." Naruto looked at his hands. They were the same hands. But he felt more and less. He felt the weight of what he'd just done. He'd come to this world, and within a day, he'd killed one of its rulers. "I didn't want this," he said quietly. "I know," Melina replied, rising. "But it is yours now. The path of a tarnished is not one of wanting. It is one of bearing. You bear his rune, and with it, a part of this land's burden." They stood in silence for a long moment, the only sound the skittering of golden leaves across the bloodied stone. Naruto finally looked towards the massive gate at the far end of the courtyard. It was open, leading to a narrow, winding path that descended into a thick, ethereal fog. Beyond that fog lay Liurnia, the land of the lakes. "We should go," he said, his voice hollow, "before more of his things show up." Melina nodded. As they walked towards the gate, past the cooling corpse of a demigod, Naruto paused. He looked back at the colossal form of Godric. He thought of his own world, of the pain and loneliness he'd endured. He thought of the Hokage, who bore the weight of an entire village. Maybe this was what it meant to be strong. Not just to win fights, but to carry the things you had to do, even when they made you sick. He turned away from the grafted and walked into the fog, Melina a silent shadow at his side. The golden light of the Erd tree, indifferent and vast, watched them go. The lands between had claimed another soul, and it was already beginning to change him. Chapter 3: The Witch in the Rise. The fog that cloaked the border of Liurnia was not a natural thing. It was thick as wool, cold as a grave, and it swallowed sound whole. Naruto could barely see Melina, though she was only a few feet ahead of him, a faint, wavering silhouette in the gray. The path underfoot was slick with moisture, and the only sound was the dull thud of his own heart and the whisper of his breath. It felt like walking through a dream. A bad one. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning in the fog. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it began to thin. The gray dissolved into tendrils, and the tendrils dissolved into mist, revealing a landscape of impossible, melancholic beauty. They stood on the shore of a vast, shimmering lake. Its surface was like polished silver, perfectly still, reflecting the bruised purple and gold of the sky. Jutting from the waters were the skeletal remains of enormous, ancient structures, towers, arches, the ribs of colossal beasts long dead. In the distance, rising from the center of the lake on impossible spires of rock, sat a gleaming, crystalline academy. The Raya Lucaria Academy, Melina called it. A place of sorcerers and scholars, now consumed by its own forbidden knowledge. But they weren't headed there. Not yet. Melina pointed to a massive, landlocked structure on their side of the lake. It was a giant stone rise shaped like a bell, its top flattened and crowned with an ornate, crumbling building. "The Four Belfries," she said. "An ancient waypoint. One of its bells is said to lead to a place where you can restore Godric's great rune. The Divine Tower of Limgrave." Naruto just nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. The open space felt almost as oppressive as the fog. It was too quiet. Too still. Their journey across the lake's shore was uneventful, save for the strange, floating jellyfish that drifted aimlessly, their bells glowing with a soft, internal light. They were harmless, almost beautiful. It was a stark contrast to the horror of Stormvale. As they drew closer to the Four Belfries, Naruto felt it. A prickle at the back of his neck, the shinobi's instinct for being watched. It wasn't the mindless stare of a soulless. This was something intelligent. Calculating. He stopped, his hand drifting to the pouch at his hip. What is it? Melina asked. We're not alone. They emerged from a copse of twisted, leafless trees, and there, at the base of the first belfry, she was waiting for them. She was not what Naruto expected. He'd been braced for another monster, another mad demigod. Instead, he saw a young woman, petite and pale, sitting on a fallen piece of masonry. She wore a flowing, azure robe and a strange, pointed witch's hat that flopped to one side, partially obscuring her face. Four delicate, almost doll-like arms were folded calmly in her lap. She was reading a book, utterly unconcerned by their arrival. As they approached, she looked up. Her face was serene, beautiful in an unnerving, otherworldly way. One of her eyes was a deep, midnight blue. The other was closed, a dark, seamless socket. A doll. She was a doll. Ah, she said, her voice soft, measured, and carrying an immense, ancient weight. A tarnished who burns with a different light. And accompanying him, the kindling maiden. Her single eye, and possibly blue, moved from Naruto to Melina. A curious pairing. Melina stiffened beside Naruto, a flicker of something, recognition? Fear, crossing her face. Runni the witch? She whispered. Runni. Naruto remembered the name. One of the demigods. A child of Marika. Another piece of the broken, dangerous puzzle. You know her? Naruto asked, his voice low. She is feared, Melina said carefully. She was involved in a great crime. The Night of the Black Knives. She is the one who set in motion the chain of events that led to the shattering. Runni closed her book, a faint, enigmatic smile playing on her lips. You make me sound so dreadful, Melina. I merely sought to free myself from a gilded cage. A concept I suspect our orange-clad friend might understand. She looked at Naruto, and her gaze was piercing. It felt like she was looking through him, past the flesh and chakra, straight into the core of his being. You carry a shard of the ring. Godric's, if I'm not mistaken. A crude, pathetic thing, befitting its former owner. But you are not crude. You are a vessel for a sun, not this land's feeble gold. How wonderfully strange. Naruto didn't relax. He'd met manipulators before. Orochimaru had that same calm, curious demeanor, right before he tried to steal your body. What do you want? Direct. I appreciate that. Runni rose, her forearms unfolding with an eerie grace. I have a proposition for you, tarnished sunbearer. Godric's rune is useless to you as it is. A blighted, twisted thing. I know where you can restore it, yes, at the Divine Tower. But I also know that path will lead you to the Round Table Hold, to the Two Fingers, to their grand design of making you their puppet Elden Lord. Her lip curled slightly in distaste. A throne's. A cage. Just as my own flesh was a cage. She took a step closer, her doll-like face tilted up to look at him. I offer you another path. A different age. Not one ordered by the greater will from beyond the sky, but an age of the stars. Of cold, dark night. An age where the meddling fingers of outer gods can no longer reach us. Melina stepped forward, placing herself slightly between Naruto and Runni. Do not listen to her, Naruto. Her ambition is as dangerous as any demigod's. She would plunge the world into an eternal chill. Runni's smile didn't waver. The chill of truth is preferable to the fevered dream of the Erd Tree, wouldn't you agree, Melina? You, of all people, should know the price of that golden light. An awkward silence fell. Naruto looked between the two women. A spirit and a witch. Both offering him a path. Both, he suspected, using him for their own ends. But Runni's words about cages and puppets, they struck a chord. He'd spent his whole life being told what he was supposed to be. The demon. The failure. The hero. The savior. Everyone always had a plan for him. I'm not here to be anyone's lord, Naruto said finally, his voice firm. I'm here to find a way home. Runni's single eye widened slightly, a flicker of genuine surprise. Home? To your own world? She let out a soft, silvery laugh. How wonderfully, naively optimistic. Do you even know how you arrived? No. Then you are truly lost. She seemed to consider this for a moment. And yet, perhaps that is your greatest strength. You have no ambition for this land's power. No desire for its throne. You are a blank slate, an outside context. Her gaze intensified. Help me, Naruto Uzumaki. Help me find the hidden treasure of Nokran, the eternal city, buried beneath the earth. In return, I will use my knowledge to help you understand the nature of the force that brought you here. The light that snatched you from your world. It was not the Erdtree's gold. It was something else. Something older. This stopped Naruto cold. She knew something. A way to understand, if not to get home, then at least to know why he was here. He looked at Melina. Her face was a mask of worry. Naruto, Melina said quietly, dealing with Runni is perilous. Her path is one of betrayal and sacrifice. And the path to the Erdtree isn't? Naruto countered. You said yourself the tarnished are consumed. You want me to reach the Forge of the Giants. That's your path. She's offering me answers. Answers that may damn you. Maybe. He looked back at Runny. What's a Nokron? A hidden treasure. A finger's layer blade. A weapon that can kill the two fingers that guide the tarnished. It is key to my fate, and to the fate of this world. She held up one delicate, four-fingered hand. I am not asking for your blind loyalty, little son. I am proposing a trade. Your strength for my knowledge. A simple transaction. It wasn't simple, and Naruto knew it. Nothing in this world was. But the promise of knowledge, of understanding, was a lifeline. He was drowning in this strange, broken land, and she was offering him a rope, even if it was frayed and tied to something unknown. He made a decision. He was a ninja. He gathered information from any source he could. He would use her, just as she intended to use him. The key was to not get used up in the process. Okay, he said. I'll help you find this finger's layer blade. But I'm not your servant. And the moment your transaction starts to feel like a trap, I'm gone. Rundy's smile widened, a genuine expression of amusement. A pragmatist! How refreshing among the power-mad fools of this land. She inclined her head, a gesture of respect. Then it is agreed. Seek me again when you have mastered Godric's rune and grown strong enough to face the horrors below. You will find me at the top of Rundy's Rise, north of the Carrion Manor. The manor is dangerous. Filled with the animated weapons of a bygone era. Do not die before you are useful. And with that, she turned, her robes whispering against the stone, and walked towards one of the other belfries. Before Naruto could say another word, she touched the base of the bell, and with a soft chime, vanished. Naruto let out a long breath he didn't know he'd been holding. She's intense. Melina was quiet for a long moment. You have made a dangerous ally, Naruto. Runny walks her own path, and she cares for nothing and no one who cannot serve it. Yeah, I got that. He looked at her, his expression softening. But so do you, right? You need me to reach the forge. Melina met his gaze, and for once, her ancient weariness seemed to crack, revealing a sliver of genuine feeling. I need you, yes. But I would not sacrifice you to get there. It wasn't a grand declaration. It was quiet, simple, and in this world of scheming witches and mad demigods, it meant everything. Naruto felt the cold knot in his chest loosen just a little. Then let's find this tower and fix this stupid rune, he said. We've got a date with a scary doll lady, and I have a feeling we're going to need all the power we can get. They turned away from the four belfries, leaving the echo of Rennie's proposal hanging in the still air. Ahead lay the divine tower, and the next step on a path that was becoming more tangled by the hour. Naruto didn't know where it would lead, but for the first time since arriving in this nightmare, he didn't feel quite so alone. He had a ghost with a conscience, and a deal with a witch. It was a strange team, but it was his. Chapter 4: A Conversation at the Lake-Facing Cliffs. The divine tower of Limgrave was not what Naruto expected. After the gothic horror of Stormvale, and the eerie beauty of Liurnia, he braced for another monument to madness. Instead, the tower was simply solemn. A colossal, cylindrical structure of pale, seamless stone, it rose from a secluded, misty island, connected to the mainland by a single, weathered bridge. It felt less like a fortress and more like a mausoleum. The interior was just as austere. A single, spiraling staircase wound its way up the inner wall, illuminated by the soft, golden glow of hovering, enchanted braziers. There were no enemies here, no shambling soldiers or lurking horrors. Just an immense, echoing silence. It was a place of waiting. At the very top, in a circular chamber open to the sky, they found it. An enormous, two-fingered hand, gray and desiccated, its flesh stretched tight over bones the size of tree trunks. It was planted in the center of the room, fingers pointing stiffly upwards, as if frozen in the act of reaching for something. This was a two fingers. A conduit for the greater will, the outer god that governed the lands between through the Elden Ring. Melina instructed him to approach. As he drew near, the fingers twitched. A faint, resonant hum filled the air, a sound that felt less like hearing and more like a thought being pressed directly into his mind. It was the voice of the fingers, ancient, alien, and utterly incomprehensible. It was a jumble of concepts: grace, gold, lord, restoration, a celestial white noise that gave him a headache. But as he stood there, holding Godric's great rune, the finger's attention seemed to shift from him to the power he carried. The hum intensified, and Naruto felt a pulling sensation. The malformed, twisted energy of the rune in his chest began to unravel and reform. It was painful, like having his very soul stretched on a rack, but it was also cleansing. The grotesque, grafted nature of the power was stripped away, leaving behind a core of pure, golden potential. When it was over, Naruto stumbled back, gasping. The rune was still there, but it felt different. Stable. Usable. He could feel its power now, a reservoir of strength he could tap into. It was the power of a demigod, and it was his. Melina was waiting for him at the base of the tower. Her face was etched with concern. You succeeded. Naruto nodded, still catching his breath. Yeah. It feels weird. Heavy. You will grow accustomed to it. She hesitated. Now that you carry a true shard of the ring, the call of the Round Table hold will grow stronger. It is a place outside of space and time, a gathering point for tarnished guided by grace. You should go. You will find allies there, and knowledge. And more people who want to use me for their own plans? Naruto asked, a tired edge to his voice. Perhaps, Melina admitted. But also a blacksmith who can strengthen your weapons. A merchant who trades in rare goods. And a woman, a finger maiden, who can help you understand the finger's will, should you choose to listen. Naruto thought about it. He was tired, hungry, and emotionally drained. The thought of a warm meal and a safe place to sleep, even a supernatural one, was appealing. But more than that, he needed information. He needed to understand this world better if he was going to survive in it, let alone find a way home. All right, he said. Let's see this round table hold. The round table hold materialized around him in a swirl of golden light. One moment he was standing with Melina at the base of the divine tower, the next he was in a grand, circular hall. A massive, round table dominated the center, surrounded by empty chairs. Fires crackled in great hearths, casting a warm, welcoming glow. It was the first place in the lands between that felt truly alive. Melina was gone. He was alone. He explored the hold cautiously. He found the blacksmith, a giant of a man named Hyug, who was chained to an anvil but seemed content, endlessly pounding away at a piece of metal. He found the merchant, a nomadic woman with a kind smile, who offered him dried meat and a place to rest. He found other tarnished, warriors from all walks of life, who eyed him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. But it was in a small, side chamber that he found the person Melina had mentioned. She was a finger maiden, a woman named Theralina, dressed in simple white robes. She had a gentle face and eyes that held a deep, abiding sadness. She offered to guide him, to help him commune with the two fingers, to understand his purpose as a tarnished. Naruto listened politely, then declined. He wasn't their tarnished. He wasn't anyone's. He found a quiet corner, sat down with his back against the stone wall, and for the first time since arriving in this nightmare, he let himself feel the full weight of it all. Homesickness, a physical ache in his chest. Fear, a cold snake coiling in his gut. Confusion, a fog in his mind. He missed ramen. He missed Irika's scolding. He missed Sakura's smile, even when it wasn't for him. He missed Sasuke's stupid, brooding face. A shadow fell over him. He looked up to see a tarnished warrior, a man with a scarred face and weary eyes, holding out a tankard of ale. You look like you could use this, the man said, his voice a low rumble. Naruto took it, surprised by the simple kindness. Thanks. The man, who introduced himself as Rogier, a scholar of the glintstone sorceries, sat down across from him. He didn't ask about Naruto's past or his purpose. Instead, he simply started talking. He talked about the history of the lands between, about the Golden Order and its flaws, about the Knight of the Black Knives and the demigods who fell. He spoke of Runny the Witch, not with fear, but with a scholar's fascination. He told Naruto about the Eternal Cities, sunk deep beneath the earth, where the Nox people once plotted against the greater will. Naruto listened, asking questions, letting the information wash over him. For the first time, the world started to make a little more sense. It wasn't just random horror, it was a world with a history, with causes and effects, with its own tragic logic. Later, as he sat alone again, staring into the flames of a hearth, the voice of Renly echoed in his mind. The light that snatched you from your world was something else. Something older. Rogier's talk of the Nox and their plots, of things hidden beneath the earth, clicked into place. Maybe the answers weren't in the golden Erdtree above. Maybe they were in the darkness below. He spent 3 days in the Round Table hold. He trained with Hyug, learning to better channel the power of his great rune into his physical attacks. He spoke with the other tarnished, gleaning scraps of information about the regions beyond Liurnia. He rested. He ate. He began to feel human again. And on the third night, he sought out Melina, who had reappeared in a quiet corner of the library. I'm going to see Renly, he told her. She looked at him, her single eye searching his face. You've made your decision. I have. Rogier told me about the Eternal Cities. About the Nox. Renly said the power that brought me here was old. Older than the Erdtree. Maybe those cities have answers. And if they don't? Then I'll be stronger for having tried. And I'll have helped a demigod along the way. That can't hurt, right? He tried a grin. It was a little more genuine than before. Melina didn't smile back. It can. It can hurt a great deal. Runni's path is one of profound loss, Naruto. She will ask you to sacrifice things you may not be willing to give. Naruto's grin faded. I'm not planning on sacrificing anything. I'm just going to find a knife for her. A transaction, remember? Melina was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and placed a cool, insubstantial hand on his arm. Be careful, she whispered. The lands between has a way of taking more than you offer. He left the round table hold the next morning, stepping out into the gray light of Liurnia. The air was cold and damp, carrying the scent of the vast lake. He turned his back on the gleaming spires of Raya Lucaria and headed north, towards the Carrion Manor, towards Rennie's Rise, and towards the darkness that waited beneath the world. The path ahead was clear, and for the first time, Naruto felt like he was walking it for a reason of his own making. Chapter 5: The Descent into Nokron. The Carrion Manor was a nightmare of animated fury. Its grounds were patrolled by massive, enchanted gauntlets that would rise from the dirt, fingers scrabbling, before launching themselves at him with the force of cannonballs. Inside, spectral knights wielding great swords of magical energy materialized from thin air, their silent attacks forcing Naruto to rely on every ounce of his shinobi agility. He fought his way through, room by painstaking room. The Raisin Shuriken was too slow, too draining for these mobile foes. He relied on his speed, on shadow clones to draw their attention, on the raw physical power boosted by Godric's great rune. He felt himself getting stronger, his reactions sharper, his chakra reserves somehow deeper, as if the rune was slowly merging with his own life force. After what felt like an eternity, he reached the top of the manor's highest rise. Runni's Rise. The tower was tall and slender, a finger of stone pointing at the weeping sky. The interior was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. He climbed the spiraling stairs and found her at the very top, in a circular study filled with books, star charts, and the model of a vast, complex cosmos. Runni the witch was waiting for him, her forearms folded, her single blue eye gleaming in the candlelight. You survived, she said, a hint of approval in her soft voice. Good. I had hoped my new associate would prove more durable than the usual tarnished rabble. Naruto leaned against the doorframe, catching his breath. He was covered in dust and sweat, a small cut above his eyebrow dripping blood into his eye. He wiped it away with the back of his hand. The manor's a real fixer-upper. Your security system needs work. A faint smile touched her lips. Duly noted. Now, for the matter at hand. She gestured to a large, ornate chessboard sitting on a table. On it, instead of pieces, rested a single, smooth stone. Beneath this very tower, far below the earth, lies the eternal city of Nokron. It was sunk into the ground by the Greater Will as punishment for the Noxus heresy. They sought to create a lord of their own, a lord of darkness, and for that, they were buried alive. She touched the stone on the board. It began to glow with a cold blue light. The way is sealed, but I have found a key. A hidden passage lies in the Mistwood, in Limgrave, triggered by a message carved into the ground. It will lead you to the Siofra River well, and from there, you must find your own way to the city. It will be dark. It will be dangerous. The Nox and their creations still walk the streets. Naruto pushed off from the doorframe and walked to the table, looking down at the glowing stone. And this finger's layer blade? It lies in the deepest part of the city, in a grand hall known as the Knight's Sacred Ground. It is guarded by a powerful mimic. A creature that can take any form. Her eye met his. Including yours. Naruto's blood ran cold. A creature that could become him? He thought of the fights he'd had, the techniques he'd used. A monster with all his skills, all his power, but with none of his restraint. It was a terrifying thought. I'll need to be ready, he said quietly. You will, Runni agreed. And when you return with the blade, I will fulfill my end of our transaction. I will tell you what I know of the force that brought you here. She held up a delicate hand. But be warned. The knowledge may not be what you hope for. Naruto just nodded. He was past hoping for easy answers. He just wanted the truth, whatever it was. The descent into Nokron was a journey into the heart of the world. The Siofra River well was a vast, cylindrical shaft that plunged into absolute darkness. Naruto had to climb down its slippery, ancient walls for what felt like hours, the only light the faint, residual glow of Godric's rune in his chest. He finally reached the bottom, stepping out onto the banks of an underground river that flowed with inky, black water. And above him, impossibly, was a starry sky. It wasn't a real sky, he realized. It was a vast, vaulted ceiling, miles high, embedded with millions of glowing crystals that mimicked the constellations of the surface world. It was breathtakingly beautiful and deeply unsettling. An entire world buried alive. The Siofra River region was a labyrinth of cliffs, ruins, and spirit-filled groves. He encountered the ancestral followers, antlered, cloaked figures who worshipped the spirits of the dead. They were not hostile, merely watchful, their mournful songs echoing through the cavern. He fought enormous, floating spectral mariners who commanded armies of skeletons. He learned to fear the dark, for in it lurked giant, subterranean ants and strange, floating jellyfish that exploded into clouds of poisonous gas. Days bled into one another in the timeless dark. He slept in crumbling ruins, ate the dried provisions from the round table hold, and pushed ever deeper. He was alone, truly alone, for the first time since meeting Melina. She could not follow him here, she had said. The weight of the earth above was too much for her spirit form. Her absence was a hollow ache in his chest. He hadn't realized how much he'd come to rely on her quiet presence, her voice in the silence. He fought. He learned. He adapted. He found that his shadow clones were invaluable for scouting the treacherous paths. He developed a new, smaller Rasengan, one he could form in an instant, perfect for close-quarters combat against the agile Nox warriors. The great runes sang in his blood, a constant, humming power that made him faster, stronger, more resilient. He was becoming something new. Something harder. Finally, after what felt like an age, he found the entrance to Nokron itself. It was a massive gate of black, seamless stone, carved with images of a people bowing to an empty throne. It was slightly ajar, and he slipped through. Nokron was a city of ghosts. Its architecture was elegant, otherworldly, with sweeping curves and spires that seemed to defy gravity. But it was all dead. The streets were empty, the buildings dark. The only sound was the whisper of wind through the ruins and the distant, echoing chime of a bell. He made his way through the silent city, past the thrones of its dead lords, past the silver tiers, strange, liquid metal creatures that would coalesce into humanoid forms and attack, and finally, he reached the night's sacred ground. It was a vast, circular hall, dominated by a single, massive, silver mirror that stood in the center. The air here was thick, heavy with a malevolent presence. Naruto stepped into the hall, his senses screaming a warning. The mirror shimmered. And then it stepped out of the glass. It was him. A perfect copy. The same spiky blonde hair, the same orange tracksuit, the same whisker marks on its cheeks. But its eyes were not his bright, defiant blue. They were pits of absolute blackness, reflecting no light. Its expression was not one of determination or fear. It was blank. Empty. A void wearing his face. The mimic didn't speak. It just attacked. And it was fast. As fast as him. It met his first punch with a block of its own, the impact shuddering through his arm. It knew his moves. It countered his every strike. When he tried to create distance, it was there. When he formed hand seals for a shadow clone, it did the same, and suddenly the hall was filled with a dozen Narutos, all with those terrible, empty eyes. The fight was a brutal, disorienting chaos. He was fighting himself, his own techniques, his own speed. He couldn't gain an advantage because there was no advantage to be gained. He was fighting his own shadow. He realized, with a chilling clarity, that he couldn't win this fight by being a better ninja. The mimic would always match him. He had to be something the mimic couldn't replicate. He stopped fighting. He stopped moving. He just stood there, in the center of the hall, his clones dispersing as he let the technique go. The mimic's clones vanished too. It stood before him, head tilted, its dark eyes seemingly curious. Naruto looked at this creature, this monster wearing his face, and he didn't see a fearsome enemy. He saw what Runni had seen in him. A blank slate. A tool. The mimic wasn't evil, it was just empty. It had no past, no pain, no love, no hope. It was a perfect copy of his body, but it had none of the things that made him him. He thought of Iruka, the first person to ever see him as more than a monster. He thought of Sasuke, his bond of rivalry and friendship forged in pain. He thought of Sakura, whose smile he still wanted to protect, even from here. He thought of Melina, the lonely ghost who had trusted him with her purpose. He thought of the ramen at Ichiraku's, the taste of home. All of that, the entire, messy, painful, beautiful tapestry of his life, welled up inside him. It wasn't a technique. It wasn't a power-up. It was just him. The mimic lunged, its hand crackling with the blue light of a Rasengan. Naruto didn't move. He didn't defend. He just looked into its empty eyes and said, "I'm sorry." The Rasengan was an inch from his face when the mimic froze. Its black eyes widened, and for a fraction of a second, Naruto saw a flicker of something in them. Confusion. Pain. Loss. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, the mimic's form dissolved into a cascade of silver dust, scattering across the stone floor. Where it had stood, a dagger now lay. It was a strange weapon, its blade forged from a single, solid piece of finger bone, its hilt wrapped in dark leather. It hummed with a cold, ancient power. The finger's layer blade. Naruto picked it up, his hands trembling. He didn't feel triumphant. He just felt drained. And sad. The mimic hadn't been a monster. It had been a prisoner, a reflection forced to fight. He had won by showing it what it could never have. A soul. He turned away from the mirror and began the long journey back to the surface, the weight of the blade in his hand a cold promise of answers, and a reminder of the cost of getting them. Chapter 6: The Price of Starlight. The climb back to the surface felt longer than the descent. Every shadow seemed to hold a memory of the mimic, every distant sound was a ghost of its silent scream. Naruto moved on autopilot, his body finding the handholds, his feet navigating the treacherous paths, while his mind remained in that circular hall, staring into the face of his own emptiness. When he finally emerged from the Seofra River well, blinking in the gray, surface world light, he was a different person than the one who had descended. The fight with the mimic had scraped away something, leaving a raw, exposed nerve. He understood, with a terrible clarity, that the power he was accumulating wasn't just a tool. It was a weight. Every rune, every skill, every victory, added another stone to the burden he carried. The lands between wasn't making him stronger, it was making him harder. Melina was waiting for him at the base of the well, a small, still figure against the vastness of the mistwood. When she saw him, her single eye widened. She rushed forward, a flicker of genuine concern on her usually impassive face. "Naruto," she breathed, stopping just short of touching him. "You're different." He looked at her, and for a moment, the mask he'd unknowingly constructed cracked. The weariness, the horror, the profound loneliness of the past weeks flooded his eyes. He looked younger, and infinitely older, all at once. "I met myself down there," he said, his voice hoarse from disuse. "A version of me with nothing inside. And I beat it by showing it what it was missing." He looked down at his hands. "I don't know if that makes me strong, or just cruel." Melina was silent for a long moment. Then, gently, she said, "It makes you human. The mimic could copy your form, your skills, your power. But it could not copy your pain, or your love, or your hope. Those are not things that can be replicated. They are things that must be lived." She finally reached out and placed her cool, insubstantial hand on his. "You did not destroy it out of cruelty. You freed it from its emptiness." Her words were a balm, a small warmth in the cold that had settled around his heart. He didn't know if they were true, but he wanted them to be. He needed them to be. They walked in silence back towards Liurnia. The journey gave Naruto time to process, to let the hard edges of his experience soften just enough to be bearable. By the time they reached the foot of Runny's rise, he felt almost human again. Runny was waiting for them at the top of her tower, her doll-like form seemingly unchanged. But as Naruto entered, he sensed a shift in her. The usual cool amusement in her eye was tempered with something else. Anticipation, perhaps. Or hope. He walked to her table and placed the finger's layer blade on it. The bone-white dagger seemed to drink the light from the room, its presence a palpable chill. Runny stared at it for a long, breathless moment. Then, with a reverence that was almost religious, she reached out with one of her delicate arms and touched the blade. A shiver ran through her, and for an instant, her serene expression flickered, revealing a depth of emotion, pain, longing, resolve, that she usually kept hidden. "The finger's layer blade," she whispered, her voice thick. "A weapon born from a corpse of a god, capable of slaying the two fingers that serve the greater will. With this, I can sever their influence. I can finally walk my own path." She looked up at Naruto, and for the first time, she truly saw him. Not as a tool, not as an outside context, but as an individual. "You have done what no other tarnished could. You have brought me the key to my freedom." She gestured to a chair. "Sit. Rest. You have earned your answers." Naruto sank into the chair, exhaustion finally claiming his body. Melina stood behind him, a silent guardian. Runny picked up the blade, holding it before her, its pale surface reflecting in her single blue eye. "The force that brought you here," she began, her voice taking on the cadence of a lecturer, "was not a random tear in reality. It was a guided event. A summoning." "A summoning?" Naruto frowned. "By who?" "Not a who. A what?" Runny's gaze was intense. "There are powers in this universe older than the Erd Tree, older than the Greater Will itself. They reside in the spaces between stars, in the voids between worlds. One of them, I believe, took an interest in you." She set the blade down and moved to her star charts. "When the Elden Ring was shattered, it didn't just break the laws of this land. It sent a tremor through the very fabric of reality. A crack formed. A fissure between worlds.